Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the show. I'm Ben Bateman.
And I'm Andrew Ghai.
And we are
the Action Guys.
So, today, we have a very special topic on the Action Guys. Drew and I went to see a film the other night. It was an action comedy.
We did. I laughed quite a bit in the theater. It was not an action comedy, however.
The film was Mortal Engines.
And it was atrociously bad in my mind. I'm
going to tell you guys a quick story.
So, I'm going to sit back and listen.
We show up. Little did we know there was going to be finger food, free wine. It was lovely.
They had quite the spread.
We got primed and ready to enjoy the film.
I had about 3 glasses of wine before it started.
And by 3, anyway, we're watching the film.
I got 3 myself.
We're watching the film, and about halfway through, Andrew basically was berating the film loudly in the theater, as
everyone else was, but I think what happened was the guy in front of me kind of sparked the fire because he was really going in, and he didn't. I was at least trying to like whisper talk a little bit.
So Andrew's going off, and finally I had to look over and be like, "Bro, it's a press screening. Give me a break." And he was like, "Okay." By 20 minutes later, the entire theater was laughing. It was no longer just Andrew or Andrew and the guy in front of him. It was the whole theater. By the end of the movie, I almost had to apologize for reprimanding him because it was so bad.
I like texted him afterwards because we were talking about how bad it was, and I was like, "But you reprimanded me." You're like, and I stand by it. You're like, I completely stand by reprimanding you. There was no reason, and he's totally right.
But it was an aggressively bad movie.
It was an aggressively bad movie, and I have never laughed as much in a theater unintentionally.
Now, on the flip side of things, it looked awesome. Like, the visuals were really cool. Big thanks to Studio 71 for throwing this and inviting us. Like, I'm always going to be happy to screen a movie and give it my best because, like, I wanted to like that movie. It just so happened that I hated every character and all their relationships.
It really missed. And even the gentleman who was running it, whose name is escaping me at the moment, he knew on the way out. Like, we had a nod and a laugh and all that. But yes, you are completely correct in reprimanding me. And it was just, I just couldn't help myself. I couldn't.
So guys, today's episode has a little something to do with a genre we like to call action comedies. Now, that may have been an unintentional action comedy, but today we are going to be talking about the 5 action comedies you must watch before you die, and why. It's the Action Guys. We'll be back in 1 second.
All right, so I get it. These movies were supposed to laugh during. And
this is a lovely list.
This is okay. So first and foremost, action comedies we love, we adore, but they're very hard to make. Now, we've been watching them our whole lives with like The Naked Gun, Loaded Weapon, Hot Shots.
Yeah, those are full spoof. Like, those are straight up like slapstick spoof movies, and then also other ones that we grew up watching. I think the genre has really sort of blossomed, but like even like take a movie like Grosse Pointe Blank. It's kind of a good example where it's like kind of an action comedy, kind of a black comedy, like
Shanghai Noon and Shanghai Nights.
Yep.
I loved those movies.
I'm sure you did.
And I loved Rush Hour.
Oh, Rush Hour's a good one.
Yeah, Rush Hour is good.
That's a classic action comedy.
Yeah. Bad Boys. These are all movies that have come out that kind of shaped this list that we have.
Yeah, they sort of toe the line. And so I think the reason that we decided to bring this up today with a long-winded intro about Mortal Engines is that we love this genre, but it is a genre that fits squarely into the sort of mid-level movie that studios don't really want to make anymore. There's a gap now, movies that cost somewhere between $6 and $70 million, that if there's not some built-in IP, it's based on an extremely successful young adult novel series or
intellectual property for those that don't know.
It actually doesn't mean that, Drew. It does. I wish it didn't. That'd be hilarious. But like studios don't want to take a chance on spending $44 million now on a movie if it's just like, this is a funny script with 2 good actors and we hope it makes money. They want to back something based on a book. They want to back a superhero movie. They want animated. They want something with an expanded universe, and that's what studios do now.
Yeah, and it's so sad because it's like there are a lot of these movies. Only one of them made over $200 million, and it was shocking which one it was. Not that shocking because at the time that it came out, it made so much sense. We even kind of guessed that, but really, what it is to kind of piggyback on what you're talking about is that no one wants to just make a movie because it's a good movie anymore.
Yeah.
They need to make money off of it. And
Right.
very, very rarely do you get the ones that are just like, I'm going to make a good movie and it's going to be received well. The Academy's going to pay attention to it. It's still not going to make a lot of money.
Right.
Like, I don't think Moonlight made much money, you know, when it was originally released.
Yeah, it was only the Oscar push that really.
And then the Oscar push came out, you know, but it's like, there's movies like that where they're still, or like, for instance, Hidden Figures is a movie that you have been telling me to watch for years now. And I watched it on the plane. I love that movie. It's
a great movie.
It was so great, and it was kind of like
It is an action comedy. I mean,
it is an action. That's the number one on our list. No, but that was a movie that felt like, oh wow, this is just a really well made movie that's incredibly well written and acted. It's not over the top. It's not spectacle, but it was completely overlooked and forgotten.
and I think, just on a tangent for a second with that movie. That movie ended up making money, but the reason it made money is the same reason Moonlight did, which is that there was a big Oscar push behind it. And it was marketed to us as, look at this inspirational story about 3 women of color succeeding in a white man's world.
Yes.
And that's why this movie's important and you should see it, as opposed to, this is a really great movie and a great story.
That also speaks on social issues right now.
Yeah,
Not go watch this because of the social issues.
And the marketing, Hollywood marketing is so interesting because they sort of know that if they market it the way I just mentioned, the former, they're going to get people in seats.
Yep.
And that's the way they have to put the trailer together. But that also gives a lot of the movie away. It makes the movie actually feel cheaper when you're watching it because you're like, oh, I see what you're doing here. You're trying to get me to pay attention to something versus like just a really exciting movie. And so but that movie ended up just obviously being amazing.
and
And
blew
it's just,
both of us away.
Yeah.
Weeping on the plane.
Yeah, I cried on an airplane.
But so the point behind this conversation, this tangential conversation we're having, is that none of these movies really made a lot of money. Only one of them, like I said, made over $200 million.
Yep.
And this list is, as we said, the 5 action comedies that you must watch before you die. Go ahead, man.
This is a great list, and I cannot wait to get to the 5. We're gonna save it for a quick second, and we're gonna talk really quickly about some of our honorable mentions. And not to say that any of these honorable mentions are anything less than amazing, but there's a reason we decided not to put each one on.
Yeah.
So we're gonna start off with Guardians of the Galaxy as an honorable mention.
Yeah, both of them, honestly.
Yep, 1 and 2. They're phenomenal movies. They're absolutely hilarious. They're definitely based in IP that existed. They were based in a universe that people were going to go see. There was no chance that Guardians of the Galaxy 1 wasn't at least going to make its money back.
Yeah, because even someone like me, I was really skeptical of the first Guardians. I think a lot of people were, but I still went and saw it in theaters because it was part of the Marvel Universe, because Chris Pratt was in it.
It's MCU. It's 2014. We're already well into, at that point, we're into phase 2 already. I think that's either phase 2 or phase 3. That might be the beginning of phase 3 now that I think about it.
I'm useless with the phases.
Yeah, I can't remember. It's either it's one or the other, but it's a great movie. Both of them are wonderful and they're super, super funny. They don't really have to succeed in the way that like a movie like The Hitman's Bodyguard has to, where you see the trailer and you're like, okay, I have to buy into the idea that comedy with action and 2 people I like is going to sell me on this. It's not part of something else.
And the relationship between just these 2 people, which is a big part of this episode, is mainly, if you look at the movies on the list, it's about a relationship between 2 or 3 people, not like an ensemble cast.
Yeah, and the next honorable mention set is going to be Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz.
Yeah, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and I also want to throw Cabin in the Woods in there, because Cabin in the Woods is really far over to the horror side, but it's still very, very funny throughout, and it's definitely like nods at itself. Shaun of the Dead is one that I was kind of arguing to be on the list, and you were saying, it is a zombie movie, and I actually turned it on when I was going to sleep last night. And it does succeed so well because it spoofs horror movies, not action movies.
Yeah, it's really funny. And, then they obviously took the same sort of formula and they spoofed action movies in Hot Fuzz.
Yeah.
Hot Fuzz is really close. I would say Hot Fuzz got the closest to being number 6 on this list for us.
Yeah.
And it's really brilliant. Like the way that it really pokes the genre. It's just, for me personally.
You've never laid back on your back and shot your gun up in the air and yelled, "Yar." No, I've never done that.
It is referencing my favorite movie of all time, which is Point Break. I think that movie's really funny, and they really hit the nail on the head. When I rewatched it recently, I didn't find it to be quite as funny as I had remembered.
Well, yeah, the violence is in there. The violence throughout is good.
Yeah.
But then the end gets a little ridiculous. Like, the shootout in the town is sweet and awesome, but it's also... The rest of Hot Fuzz is pretty serious, or like at least it's grounded in reality.
Well, yeah, his whole thing, his reassignment, the fact that he's like such a pain in the ass, like all of it, it's like you kind of feel for him.
Yeah, and then the murders in the town are like pretty intense and they're hidden well, and like all of it's done pretty well to where I don't not enjoy the end. It just kind of takes me out of it.
Yeah, like we said, that probably would be number 6, I would guess. The next one we have is another duo, which is Deadpool 1 and 2.
Yes.
These movies are phenomenal. And again, if we wanted to put a superhero movie on our list, it's that or Guardians that would have made it as the essential one you have to watch. Honestly, I don't even think you need to know anything about, like, it's totally different than Guardians.
100%.
Deadpool is just like a movie that worked.
And it's like, it's all the best things about Ryan Reynolds that we fell in love with Van Wilder and Waiting, you know. It's just him being quick and snarky and clever, but he also has really, really great dramatic moments, obviously.
And his romance is so
it's
good.
So wonderful.
What's her name? Marina Baccarin?
Something like, I love her. I absolutely adore her. But again, there's something about it just being in the world, in the superhero universe, it coming out when it did. Again, I didn't see a chance at it failing. Like, it definitely could have not done great, but I just didn't see it failing.
Yeah, and I think, guys, the hardest thing about this is, you know, we considered just making a top 10.
Yeah.
But we didn't really want to do that. We wanted to spend a lot more time on the ones that we loved and why. So
these ones are, we talked about like what it is about them that kind of separates them from everything else. Now, Deadpool, I agree, is probably the most... On the list of honorable mentions, it's the one that stands out the most. It's like an R-rated comedy. It's lit, you know, Ryan Reynolds hadn't been around in a long time in the limelight. It felt like the closest to our list, along with Hot Fuzz, but these 5 have something very special about them.
Yes, and the last one on the honorable mentions list is Thor Ragnarok, which is really good. I mean,
it's so funny.
I love all these movies. This is the hard thing. I'm in love with all of these movies.
What's the rock creature's name?
That would be a Schmodown question.
Hey, new Doug.
Yeah, he's so good. I can't remember what his name is, but he's like Mort
like
or something.
Or Kronk. Yeah, exactly.
Kronk, maybe. I can't remember, but he's really funny. I mean, that whole movie, just everything about it is just priceless.
Carl Urban's great in it, even though he has like the ridiculous, you know, he gets all thrown up on in the beginning.
Yeah.
Everything about that movie is pretty damn hilarious. But again, it just felt that Marvel gets enough love.
Yeah. 100%. And so actually, of these 5 films that we are going to cover right now, we're going to talk about, we have actually done proper reviews of 3 of them on our show, our other show, which I'm going to plug right now, which is called Action Movie Anatomy. It's an hour-long podcast we do on the Popcorn Talk Network, also streams to video. We've done almost 200 episodes, and it's an hour-long discussion on each movie that we do. So one at a time, you can check that out. We've done 3 of these movies on there. I'll bet you the other 2 get done at some point. And last but not least, if you guys want to follow along with that show on Twitter, you can find it at Team Action Show. You can personally find me at Ben Bateman Media, Twitter and Instagram.
And you guys can find me at Andrew Ghai. And make sure to click subscribe, like, comment below. We've been talking to you guys a lot in the YouTube comments. And of course, if you're listening to this through the ears and not watching, you know, Podcast One, Apple Podcast, click all those things.
Yeah, it's amazing for you guys to be supporting us. If you are, it's like really, really means a lot to us. And we're so excited to be on Collider and have this show. And this is I think it's our 6th episode. Andrew and I have been out of the country a lot, so we're sort of backlogging, getting some episodes ready for you guys so we don't miss weeks. And when you hear this one, I'm not totally sure, but I think it doesn't matter because it's an evergreen episode.
Exactly, and like I said, the comments and the response have been absolutely amazing. So keep it up, guys. Let's get into our list. I'm going to start off with number 5. I know that we didn't really rank them, but it'll be I'm just going to say number 5 because it's the last one that we threw in. It's Spy. It's the only one that's made over $200 million on this list. It's because Melissa McCarthy is an actual superstar. She actually just is.
She is female Chris Farley. She's what he was doing in the 90s. She's everything she does in the movie is funny.
And reel that in really quick. Everyone out there that's just immediate like, oh, female Chris Farley because they're both overweight. It's not about that.
No, it's about physical comedy.
It's about the commitment with the physical comedy, the timing. Everything that they said.
Oh, her timing is about as good in comedy as I've ever seen. Like
she's a genius, and it was like we all saw it kind of coming, the slow roll, and then after Bridesmaids happened, and she just started starring in movies that were just Melissa McCarthy doing this, like in The Boss and in Spy and in Identity Thief and all this.
True or false? Melissa McCarthy has been nominated for an Oscar.
True. Yeah.
For Bridesmaids.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
She's
so good. They're talking about the puppies. I actually took a couple of those in my car. She's like everything she does. And like so Chris Farley is my favorite comedian of all time. So for me, it's very high praise to give it to her.
Yeah.
And I will say that Farley, for me, what I've always loved about him, he has the same sort of Will Ferrell quality where he can literally just kind of talk, move. He can contort his face or just look at you in this way that just makes me die laughing. And she has the same thing.
That's inappropriate.
Yeah. Like the scene in Identity Thief when they're in the car and
oh my God, the singing scene.
And she's singing along on the radio and it's so fucking good.
Like, I know that that's planned, but if it weren't to have been planned and those 3 songs came on, I guarantee you her performance would have been just as close to what we saw there, improvised on the spot.
So let's talk Spy. This is Paul Feig, who has now done, I think, 4 movies with her, right? He did Bridesmaids, he did Spy, he did The Heat, and did he do one more? He might have just done the 3.
I'll tell you right now.
Because his latest movie was that movie with Blake Lively and Anna Kendrick that came out this year, A Simple Favor, I think it was called.
Oh, that movie was supposed to be weird.
Yeah,
right?
so it's kind of weird. So maybe he just did 3 with her. But so Spy comes out, and I remember I didn't watch it in theaters. Did you?
No. Spy was one I watched like at my like online once I'd been like, okay, maybe I need to give this a try. I've heard it's pretty funny.
I started to get on board with Melissa McCarthy in the last 2 years, recognizing that like she had been really funny in what's it called in Bridesmaids, but that I hadn't given like you know
Ghostbusters also.
He did Ghostbusters. Yeah. Like these comedians when they come out of SNL, it's pretty cookie cutter. Usually the kind of movies they get. It's, you look at the stuff they give to Farrell or the stuff they give to Kevin Hart. It's like.
She wasn't on SNL, was she?
Yeah, I believe she was.
Was she? I thought she was just on TV. No, I don't think she did SNL.
No? Okay, she was on.
Kristen Wiig.
Maybe, yeah. She was in Gilmore Girls.
Yeah. 30 Rock, she did. It looks like she had Parks and Rec under her belt. The Office, she was in 15 episodes.
Okay, so I'm just making that up. But my point is when a big comedian comes out, you know the formula.
Yes.
It's very simple. It's like, okay, put them in. You saw that movie, what was it called? It came out this year, Life of the Party.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, middle-aged woman goes back to college, right? Great. Like,
what's going to happen?
Yeah, exactly, right? All these movies. The Boss. Just the premise of these movies is so simple, and they've been doing this back to Adam Sandler movies, and like comedy is really pretty basic.
Yeah.
So Spy comes out, and I think I just looked at it as like, I don't need to watch this.
Right.
She's funny, but like I don't need to see this. I don't care.
There was nothing that, it was like, oh, wow, Statham's in it, and Jude Law's in it. Interesting, and Rose Byrne's in it. And she might be my favorite part.
Rose Byrne?
She's incredible. Statham definitely, I think, is the best part because he's just, his delivery, that one scene when he talks about all the things he's done.
Like, I drive a car off a train on fire, not the car. I was on fire.
I picked up piano at a late age.
I've had this fucking arm torn off my body and reattached it with this fucking arm.
I don't know if that's medically possible.
My favorite one is when he goes, under threat of presidential assassination, I once impersonated Barack Obama convincingly. And she's like, in blackface? That's not appropriate.
That's not appropriate.
It's so good. You guys haven't, even if you haven't seen the movie, go look up that monologue, Jason Statham monologue Spy.
Yeah.
Because it's the funniest thing he's ever done.
And just like Rose Byrne's detest for everything that walks, she's the worst person ever, but she is so entertaining to watch. Like I adore her in this movie.
Yeah, I agree.
And then of course like the British friend that's like the quirky British friend that's hilarious. That's like in her ear.
There's also just so many like. It's just a funny movie. Like at the beginning when she's in the CIA office and there's like bats in the office. And like, there's just like stupid. And all of the disguises they're giving her, all of her aliases. She's just like a 45-year-old like Avon salesman. She's like a cat lady. It's just like that's the comedy that makes that movie.
in disguise.
So fucking good.
She says something about them looking like her two like something cousins that you don't want around or something. I love just the two of them together. Plus the Rose Byrne is amazing.
What does Statham say when he's like, I'm supposed to believe you, and they send somebody who looks like Mrs. Claus or something? What did he say?
Something about Mrs. Claus. This is the problem with doing episodes like this is we just want to repeat everything that's said in it. But
so why is it so significant? Why is it one of the 5 we have to watch? And I think the answer that I'm going to throw out to this is I would argue if Will Ferrell was of his generation and Jim Carrey was of his generation, kind of the guy.
Yeah.
I think she's the person right now. I think, I guess I would have said the guy at the time because there wasn't really a female equivalent at the time. She feels like, I think when you and I had a conversation on Action Movie Anatomy, I can't remember which episode it was, we talked about the 10 most A-list stars in movies right now. And I think we both ranked Melissa McCarthy in the top 4. She is the only woman that made the list because it felt like she could open any movie to $200 million.
Yeah, and the other thing about her is that she is ever palatable. Everyone loves her all the way across the country, whether you're on the West Coast, the East Coast, or in the middle of the country. Everyone loves Melissa McCarthy. Her movies, and that's kind of a blessing and a curse of being in comedy, right? Your movies don't speak like they're not too political, they're not too intense, they're not trying too hard for this. It's just like fun, dumb, good time. And then honestly, what I think is so cool about this is we've all seen James Bond a million times.
Yeah.
We know who Moneypenny is. We know who Q and M and all those people are. And it's really kind of cool to see Moneypenny get thrown into the field, especially when this is your Moneypenny.
And also, I feel like in a genre like the spy genre that's gotten so bad, really, like there's been so many bad ones, like way more bad James Bond movies than good. This is better than most James Bond movies.
Right.
I think the reason it makes the list for me as one you have to see is that like you have an action comedy that is anchored and driven by a woman, and that's pretty rare. Not that they're not funny, but it's like that they don't get the opportunity very often.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Hollywood's not behind a lot of
comedies. I mean, like there's the. I guess Ghostbusters has recently come out that was an action comedy, but again, Melissa McCarthy's in that. It's like, how many of female-driven action comedies has she not been in? The Spy That Dumped Me or something? Wasn't that another one?
That wasn't Kristen Wiig. It was Kate McKinnon.
And Kate McKinnon, right? And it's like, I've heard medium things about that, but for the most part, just Melissa McCarthy being on screen is so incredibly enjoyable, and I think Spy is the best example of that for me.
I think it's her best movie, and it just happens to really break into the genre. So I'm gonna jump to the next one. I'm gonna say number 2 on this list, and these are not ranked.
Yeah,
The Other Guys.
You love The Other Guys.
It's one of my favorite movies ever made.
You won me over to that on Action Movie Anatomy. Like, I liked it. I thought it was fine. I thought it was a good movie, Terry. But everything. Where do you want to begin? You want to talk about Bob and his wife? You want to?
When I was asked a question on the Schmodown at some point recently, one of the questions was, "What was the first Mark Wahlberg, Will Ferrell collaboration on screen?" And I remember I held up the board and the other guys, and in the mic I said, "Terry, have you tried The Water?" And no one laughed because nobody knows this movie. Because nobody likes this movie except for those of us that love this movie, and then we know.
Which is kind of a big part of this list in general, other than I'd say the biggest blockbuster one, which I mean Spy and another one are huge that are like everyone knows about, but the other 3 are ones that you kind of have to bring people to and make them adore.
There's one movie on this list that definitely is like the movie. Like it's and we'll get to it. We'll probably save it for last.
You guys could probably guess what it is, honestly, if you're thinking action comedy and huge.
Yeah.
The Other Guys is so hilarious. Like the writing, the timing, it's intelligent. The moments with him and his wife, the moments with him and Bob. Like Keaton
I love when he's in disguise and when they're in disguise because he's trying to see Eva Mendes.
Right.
And she's dressed up as the grandma and there's a sex scene and he looks at her, he's like, "I want to break your hip."
Such a good line. Who is that? That's my wife. No, seriously.
No, really, who is that? Oh, so I think again, like without just quoting every line.
She's very plain.
And there is a full episode on this one on Action Movie Anatomy. You guys can watch if you want us to just hear us like talk about everything.
Yeah.
But the reason for me this one is so interesting is that this is directed by Adam McKay, and a lot of you guys probably know, but Adam McKay has worked very closely with Will Ferrell. He's directed a lot of the most famous Will Ferrell films.
Yeah.
Anchorman being probably the most significant of the bunch.
He did Step Brothers too, didn't he?
I believe he did, yep. Yeah. He does this movie, and this movie kind of misses. It doesn't really make very much money. A lot of people didn't get it.
Because I think also throughout you're kind of wondering, like, these numbers and this statistics and like what they're talking about, it does seem like I should be paying attention to something, you know?
And you should be. Yeah. And that's the thing about this movie that's so interesting. Now, you really get what was going on a couple years later when McKay made The Big Short.
Yes.
And that's his transition from comedy into drama. But The Big Short's a fascinating movie, and it's very smart. I recently rewatched it, and it's like...
It's so good.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
But all of his stuff that he talks about in The Big Short about the financial crisis in 2008... He scrolls on the screen during the credits of this movie about Ponzi schemes, about banks being bailed out.
And that's exactly why, like, this movie, the story is what it is basically like he's kind of slow rolling you for the end when it's just like, here's all this knowledge I'm about to drop on your face while you're kind of like laughing and that was a fun movie. You're like, holy shit. This is like a serious issue.
McKay's like really obsessed with this stuff. You know, he's got Vice coming out, so he's kind of now going a little bit more into the dramatic foray, but like... I remember watching this movie in theaters, and I thought it was really funny. I really liked it, but most people I knew didn't see it, and the ones that did see it were like, it was fine. Like no one...
That was me.
Yeah.
It was fine.
But I think it's because the comedy in this movie is pretty highbrow. It's pretty specific. It's like definitely weirder. Like the only one of the movies that I can think of, the Will Ferrell comedies that I can think of that has as many moments that feel as like odd is maybe Anchorman, because Anchorman has like a lot of really strange,
a lot of strange, awkward comedy,
but that like it becomes amazing. Like Step Brothers is really funny, but Step Brothers is also a little more on the nose.
Yes. Whereas this one, like it'll come back and there'll be callbacks throughout, and they'll say things, and you're like, oh my god, that's hilarious. Like I didn't even
Will Ferrell as Gator, as the pimp, is amazing. Like his whole entire story when he starts doing the voice. Gator, what's he say?
Gator don't play no shit.
Yeah. Gator never been about no shit. You feel me?
You been using Jimmy's?
she's like, oh, Alan, I'm pregnant. Who's the man that did that to you? Who did that to you?
Gator, go find it. like just hearing Will Ferrell do that is pretty phenomenal. I personally love Keaton.
Oh, he's so good in this.
Keaton is my favorite part.
This was the big Michael Keaton comeback for me, right?
Yes,
I hadn't seen him in a while.
This is, don't go chasing waterfalls. Oh, come on. He's like, I don't understand the reference.
I don't understand the reference. He keeps referencing TLC songs.
He's like, there is a rapist on 32nd and wrong job. I mean, look out, still look out. Like, I love it.
You don't say creep unless you're referencing TLC.
I understand.
Now let's talk about the thing that most people do remember about this movie, and the thing that I think made it stand out to me when I first saw it, which is Sam Jackson and The Rock.
I was gonna say it's got to be them, right?
Dancing and Highsmith. So they're like that is the one thing about this movie you can show to someone, and now I think they'll almost like more because Dwayne is so famous now.
Right,
he's so much bigger now than he was in 2010,
and it's a direct reference to every action movie duo.
Yeah.
These two guys that think they're indestructible.
They're so funny. Their stupid lines are so good. Their whole bit in the bullpen at the office. And I have to just say, like, this is Mark Wahlberg's first comedy. He was really, really nervous about doing this movie. He didn't really want to do it. He didn't really get it. And then he started to kind of buy in. And he started to riff and like improv. And he's really funny.
Yeah, his improvisation with Ferrell and just like their chemistry together is so excellent.
How angry does it make you that we've gotten 2 Daddy's Homes, but we have not gotten the other guys too?
Furious. I mean, I get it's because McKay probably doesn't want to write it again or like write another one.
Who knows? Or it didn't make any money. Daddy's Home did okay, so like they made a second one. Daddy's Home 2 is awful.
It was very bad.
Yeah, but
Gibson,
Sober Gibson. But yeah, I think The Other Guys for me is I mean, arguably The Other Guys is my favorite movie on this list, but it's not, I think, the most essential movie on the list. It's just the one that I think is the funniest. I mean, everything.
What the hell's wrong with you guys? This guy over there is barely even dead.
The whisper yelling, Christina,
Christina, your husband.
Oh
my God.
I've talked to you a lot about this, but like there's a couple moments in that movie that are so subtle. And I think there's this one moment where, if you guys have seen this, like you probably don't remember this because this is one of those weird things. You've seen a movie enough times, you just pick up on shit.
Right.
But like it's that scene where they're sitting with Christina and her husband who's got like the weird beard or whatever. And and she looks over, she's looking at Ferrell and she's like, I've done things in bed with you that I haven't done with anyone since. And she's pointing and covering her hand.
And he's like, what is he doing?
And Will Ferrell,
he's like,
Will Ferrell goes, Christine, it's your husband. And and then he goes, no, you're a lucky dog. And he pants and it goes to Will Ferrell's face and he like cocks his head. He like cocks his head and looks, and his eyes are kind of like, what are you up to? And it's just one of those moments where like the way they play it straight
and
is
the editing
so fucking perfect. It's so funny. I could talk about this movie for 3 hours.
I totally could too. And I love, just to wrap it up, when they pull over and they're looking and he's like, yo, come on and have sex with my wife. He's like, geez, that was like 7 miles. He's still, oh my God. Yeah. And then of course the beginning, the dancing at Highsmith, the Bai Ling, Super Chef Bobby Filet.
All of it. Like that shit. When Wahlberg does the dance moves and he's like, she goes, wow, Terry, that was surprisingly good. And he's like, you learned to dance like that sarcastically?
Yeah, I used to do all the dance moves so I could make fun of the sissy kids that do.
Yeah, it's amazing. This movie I think is so good because it's the most underrated Will Ferrell movie by a mile, and he is one of the most definitive comedians of our generation. And also, it's so smart. It's talking about shit that really happened. It's really, truly like, this is a movie that's very aware of what it's talking about. And if you pay attention, it's really talking about like it's poking real fun at our government and things that are still going on today.
Like serious issues. And I can't agree. So I'm going to hop in with the next one because it's my favorite on the list. It's MacGruber.
Grooves.
MacGruber. It makes no sense why this movie is as good as it is. It shouldn't have been as good as it is. It's not like the story doesn't blow your mind.
It's no slight to Forte, who was a friend of ours, but Forte's a B-list SNLer. He's high B probably.
Yeah, I mean he's definitely like. A lot of times you go, Will Forte. MacGruber is one of my favorite movies. It's Will Forte's in. They're like, oh, I know him. He did Portlandia. Like, no, that's not Will Forte.
Yeah.
He does The Last Man on Earth. Is it what's it called?
Last Man on Earth.
Yeah. They're like, oh, I've heard of that show. I've heard it's really good.
It was funny. He's really funny in almost everything he's in. He was great on SNL. He was there for a long time. This was a sketch that like a stupid MacGyver spoof.
I don't like the sketch that much.
No.
I never really liked it that much.
The brilliance of this film is that it's written by, I believe, Jorma Taccone and also
and Will and
Akiva Schaffer, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, because Akiva and Jorma work on shit together.
Yes.
Hot Rod and all those movies. I wish we could just talk about Popstar, but
I know you love Popstar.
But like what's really interesting about this movie is it came out. Most people missed it. But what I do remember is that when this movie was out in theaters, it was in the 90s on Tomatoes. Do you remember that?
Yeah. That's why I saw it afterwards.
Yeah.
I was like, really? It's that highly reviewed. It seems impossible.
It seemed like a joke. At the time, there hadn't been a lot of stories on Tomatoes of like a quote unquote bad movie reaching in the 90s. It wasn't like that yet. Like Tomatoes hadn't been fully adopted yet.
And Kristen Wiig was like, she was definitely on her way up. Ryan Philippe hadn't been in much in a long time. And of course, the best part of the whole thing, Dieter von Kunt, Fat Kilmer, has been hiding.
Yeah, Fat Kilmer. We didn't even mention in our honorable mentions Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which is a favorite. Yeah. But yeah, Fat Kilmer had come out of nowhere, and he's arguably the funniest part of the whole movie. This movie makes really great use of a lot of the things that Hot Fuzz does. This like in the same way.
Yeah.
Has a lot of direct action movie references. It's all of it. Like the building the team stuff and like.
Just like the ego of like the main guy in the group.
Yeah.
And the fact that like all MacGruber does is fuck things up. Like he starts off with killing his entire team while he's bragging about being the one that packs the explosives. And then like he's, like what is it, 20 minutes in the movie, he's on the ground begging Ryan Philippe. He's like, I'll do anything. I'll suck your dick. Like join my team, please.
Here's some coffee toner.
I don't know what I'm doing.
He's so good.
His freakouts and his screams, every scream is excellent.
This movie's so good. I had never seen this movie till this one time years ago. Drew and I have known each other for like 7 years now or something like that. But this is like maybe a year after we met. We hadn't done any hosting, either of us. And you were living with a buddy.
Yeah.
And
same buddy that I'm living with now, but we were in an apartment. Now he owns a home.
Yeah. And I got like kind of sick. I remember we were hanging out.
Yeah.
And I was kind of out of it. And you were like, you should watch this movie. It's really funny. And you put it on. And I was like, that was like really hilarious. Yeah. A couple years later, it took me like 2 more years to watch it again, I think. But I always had like a pretty fond memory of the movie. And the more I think I got into action movies, and we started AMA now about 3.5 years ago, I think the more of that discussion I started having, the more it really resonated with me. And I just was like, this movie is just amazing. It's just so funny.
Yeah, like the revenge story, even in the beginning, because it has all the things we talk about. On AMA, we talk about the hero qualifier and the villain qualifier, right? It's something that John Rambo, John J. And it's like in the beginning, they give this huge laundress like 7 Purple Hearts and the Congressional Medal of Home. And the guy, and he's like, and the tight end for the University of Texas. He's like, that was a long time ago, General.
Yeah, that's like one of my favorite lines. Also, like his whole bit when he's like in the monastery at the beginning is a direct reference to Rambo. That's Rambo 3. And like
they take his watch, they'll give it back.
Yeah. There's just a lot in this movie. Like, I mean, just like Vicky St. Elmo's music is really funny.
It's so bad.
Yeah.
Like so bad.
I love all the time she sings. Vicky, what about your music career? It can wait.
It can wait.
Yeah, she sings it. It's so good.
So atrocious. Philippe's perfect.
He's amazing.
He's the perfect casting for this role. He's like, oh, you broke my fucking nose. Yeah. And then he comes out. He's like, you think young rook out of the academy who thinks shit don't stink? Your shit does stink. It stinks like shit.
There's also just weird comedy in this movie where you're like, there's a difference between being able to like joke around with your friends and think you're really funny and actually being hilarious. And the stuff that they write into this movie that's so random but works so well is the stuff where I'm like, I don't know, as funny as I think I could be if I was given like a well-paid job to write a comedy.
Yeah.
There's stuff I'm just like, I don't think I could come up with that. Like him with the car and the license plate and all of it.
Like
and there's
the book. Oh my God, the psychotic
American Psycho book.
Yeah, that is also one of the best things. Is like when you find out he's the villain of the movie.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
he's like, I started. What does he say? Banging boxes or something like mowing her box, and then you're like, oh my God, you're just the villain in this. You took Dieter von Kunt's wife, pregnant wife.
Everything that like literally everything that Kilmer does is amazing. Like the Upper Decker stuff is so good.
Yes.
All of this whole movie, but like, and then the last thing I was going to add is, R.I.P. Powers Booth. He's really He's really funny in this. He's a perfect foil. And the one line that you've told me before that I've agreed with you the more I've thought about it, that they miss is after he does the whole "I'll suck your dick" thing, and when he's finally like he looks at Powers Booth after it's like a callback to it, and he says it again. He's like, "I'll suck your dick," and you always have said you wish Powers was like,
not this time, Mac.
Yeah, because like it's perfect.
It's the only miss in the whole movie.
Yeah,
it's totally true. Yeah. I love this movie. I love the throat rips. I love Vicky St. Elmo. I love how stupid he is. Like, we will be there with bells on. No, absolutely not, MacGruber. I'm not going to wear bells. Like, just it's so perfect, and it's definitely my favorite on the list.
I'll suck as many, rip as many throats.
Did you hear that?
Yeah. And one more shout out to Will Forte, who is a guy that back in the day when Drew and I worked at a restaurant, we met him waiting tables before we got into hosting, and then we would see him at parties and things like that as we got more into the business. But the most courteous, just best guy in the world, like
100%,
so nice, so generous with his time, always like so just like happy to see you, like hangs out, talks, like really, really good dude.
Yeah, he's one of those dudes that doesn't feel like he's just waiting to get out of the conversation. Like he goes out of his way to talk to you. I mean, I remember we were working, San Diego Comic-Con 2016?
Maybe, yeah.
And he went out of his way to talk to both of us. He saw us on a car because he was about to do Last Man on Earth.
Yeah.
And he was doing like a carpet for it, and I don't know if we just wrapped up or we were going to do that, but he like went out of his way to come over and say hi and like, how you been? And oh my God, it's good to see you. You're working this? Like,
yeah, exactly. And just like one of those guys that, I'm reiterating this, like we met him in like 2013 or 14 when we were waiting tables. And like, it's very rare you meet somebody who is famous and successful and awesome, and you meet them in a service capacity, and they are courteous enough to take you seriously before you actually kind of become somebody bigger in your career, doing more things. I've always really appreciated about Will. I think he's like one of the cooler celebrities that I've come across and become like a friend of.
Yeah, he never made you feel like you were waiting tables when you talked to him. It was like, oh, your buddy you ran into in the restaurant.
Even just like being appreciative of the wine you suggest.
Right.
Like, it's great wine, man. That was a great suggestion last time. Do you have it again?
Yeah.
Like, love that guy. So that's number 3 on the list. I'm going to jump in now with number 4. And I guess we'll save the big one for last. And that's The Nice Guys.
We were crying in the theater watching this together.
It was one of the funniest movies I have ever seen in a theater. There's so many things about this movie. It's another one, just like the other guys, where you're like, how did this not make money? How did this fail?
Yeah, and that was actually, I wanted to kind of talk to it or allude to it when we were talking about the other guys, because it's like, the whole movie's kind of like touching on this thing, this like big issue that we need to pay attention to. And The Nice Guys is just like, if The Nice Guys was made in the 80s, it would have been absolutely mind-bending in the sense of like calling out the government for all the pollution and the smog and all that. But that just kind of like that placeholder or that story holder works so well for me, because we live in LA and we live in this horribly polluted city, and it's like even back in the 80s this is what they were talking about. So one thing with just the story is it's super believable, and it's like I enjoy that it's based in reality.
Yeah, I also think that that this movie succeeds in a way. So Shane Black kind of created the action comedy.
Yeah.
It's not like he did the first, but he like really, Lethal Weapon is kind of the original version. And he has the Shane Black type of script is like so specific.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of famous directors and producers will talk about the Shane Blackisms in his writing, and they come out a lot.
Yeah, and so Shane really makes this movie work, and it's cool to see that in I think it was 2016 this movie came out.
Yeah.
That in 2016 he's making another movie that's kind of the same beats, the same type of thing, but succeeds so well. It's like the most refined version of what he's been doing forever, and it's just so well done. It still works. I mean, also, like, we've talked about this a lot on our other show, but the second half of Crow's career, when he basically became Fat Sweaty Crow, he like was willing to play that guy. Like, he didn't, and sort of poke fun at himself for it a little bit.
Oh, 100%.
He's so enjoyable, and they're such a good pair. Like,
he accepted her betrayal with equanimity. He's like, Jack, I'm fucking your dad. It's like, I love because I know Russell Crowe has kind of been known to be a dude who takes himself very seriously. It's been like a problem on movie sets, especially, you know, getting nominated for Best Actor 2 years, you know, back to back, right? Wasn't it back to back 3 years in a row?
He was nominated to at least 2 years in a row.
Because Cinderella Man, and I don't know if he got nominated for that, but definitely Beautiful Mind.
Gladiator, he won, then Beautiful Mind won the next year, but he didn't win for it.
Yeah, and to have him come into this movie and like you said, make fun of himself, be kind of dumpy, like, he's $7 short.
Yeah, that's one of my
$7 short.
To the girl. That's like one of my favorite moments. He's got, I mean, and there's just a lot of good moments, like Gosling falling asleep during Crow's story.
It's the best story I've ever heard.
Yeah. All the thing in the car when he's hallucinating because he's falling asleep at the wheel.
I'm like convinced that Ryan Gosling is one of the best comedic actors out there.
Yeah.
But he just doesn't give the chance, I think, because he's too pretty. And also, when you book Ryan Gosling, you want to put him in like Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah.
Not like The Nice Guys. Because you watch his timing in this, like when he breaks his arm and his scream.
That's a lot of blood.
That's a lot of blood. Or in like when he finds Sid Shattuck like murdered next to him.
Yeah.
And he freaks out. Like, he's so damn funny.
Oh, and also a lot of his stuff, like getting wasted at the party and like falling into the pool, the mermaids.
Have you seen her? You tell her I've seen him. I'm Jackie.
It's really, really funny.
Him and Crow in the stall.
Yeah.
When he's sitting there reading the magazine, like trying to hold the door open. Look away. There's a mirror. Close your eyes.
The comedy's amazing. I mean, Crow, like almost everything he does in this movie is hilarious. There's just a lot of comedy. The beats are funny. It's smart. It's quick.
And what I think separates it from the rest of this list is I actually think that there's real stakes and danger in this movie. It does feel like at some point if like Jack or Russell Crowe were to have died like in the movie, I would have totally believed it to happen. You know what I mean? It's like, obviously I didn't think Gosling or the daughter was going to die.
Yeah.
But it was just the fact that like there was someone in the movie who was just bad enough. Like Russell Crowe's not a good guy. He's not a bad guy, but he's not a good guy. Yeah. And she's like, Mr. Healy, did you kill that man? And she's like, good, because if you did, I'd never talk to you again. And you're like, oh, he's just kind of like an evil, he's like a little bit.
Yeah, he's a little bit bad.
He's a little bit bad. And so I think the idea that he could not make it through the movie is one of the things I loved about it a lot.
Yeah, and also, I mean, there's moments in this movie from the very beginning. I love the first shot of Gosling in the bathtub in his full suit, and he looks at his finger and it says, "You'll never be happy." I mean, there's a lot about this movie.
The whole scene with all the kids on the steps with the smog. It's like, we're dead. And then he's like, steps on one of their hands, like, oh, fucker. And he's like, I thought you were dead, you know?
The one kid, he's like, I'll show you my dick for $20.
Like, no, I don't want to show you. What am I even saying? What am I?
Yeah, the movie's really funny. This is a movie that if you missed, watch it. It's like, you don't have to really. It's not like the other guys where it's super smart. It's not really the same thing as MacGruber where like it's a cult classic.
Like, this movie lean into MacGruber
genuinely just funny, I think, to anyone that watches it.
I mean, I showed it to my friend. I was just in Tokyo, and like my friend grew up in Tokyo and speaks obviously fluent Japanese and like pretty good English. They loved this movie. Yeah. Like dying laughing watching this.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. So I mean, I think it's Shane Black kind of invented the genre, and 30 years later, you know, he makes another movie and it's just as good as the first one. So if you missed it, watch this one. We have one last one left to talk about, guys, and it's kind of the OG. It's sort of the most famous in the genre at this point, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you look at everyone who was in it, and at the time, like the fact that Downey does this in the middle of his run.
Yeah, it's Tropic Thunder, guys. Yeah. This is like, this movie has Robert Downey Jr. the same year he makes Iron Man, getting nominated for an Oscar. It's got Tom Cruise in his most disguised comedic role he's ever done.
It's got McConaughey playing a random cameo part before he just blows up.
It's got all these comedy guys. I think it's got Bill Hader, and you've got Jack Black in there.
Stiller.
I mean, Stiller is just, and he's like top of his game. It's got our friend Marie Menounos. She's got a part in it.
Yep.
This movie is amazing. When I've gone back to watch it again,
it's got Cooper in it too, Stephen Cooper, or right? What's his last name? The director who's also in the other guys.
Steve Coogan.
Steve Coogan.
Oh, it's got Danny McBride. It's got Nolte.
Yes.
Yeah, this cast is huge.
Nolte.
You know, I think some of the highlights to talk about here. I think this thing that stands out about this movie, there's two things really. It's usually Downey and Cruise. That's like the things people talk about.
And the trailers.
And the
trailers are so good.
Oh, they're so good.
Winner of Best Kiss.
Satan's Alley. The music.
It's so not okay, but yeah. So the first thing
they're cutting to like Downey as he's just like just like lightning. It's like the trailers are fucking incredible.
The contacts, like how blue his eyes are, is so good.
Kirk Lazarus.
He goes and does what no one thought could be done in what is 2010.
Yeah, there's a fucking incredible interview you guys can watch.
What's going on in here?
Oh, we got Roca
Jesus,
on the
hell?
show.
What the hell is going on in here?
John Steven Roca just making an appearance,
bursting in,
scaring the shit out of us.
completely unprofessional. It's our buddy John Steven Roca, Schmodown champion. You can check out Top 10. His show.
Yeah.
Don't do it. What the fuck is he doing?
What the fuck is that guy doing?
It's impossible. You can't get away with that.
That guy's beating us both.
He's beating us both, and he looks good in a cowboy hat.
What was I saying? Oh, so there's this incredible interview you can go find on the Joe Rogan podcast. It's on YouTube, and it's Jamie Foxx talking to Rogan about Downey, and he's like talking about doing blackface, and he's like literally telling a story about on the phone. Like you should do blackface or whatever. And Downey's like, fuck it, I'll do it. Just like,
Fuck it, I'll do it.
It's a great interview. He does a great impression of it. And just like Downey's like such a character. But I mean, truthfully, him in that movie is one of the funniest things I've ever seen on screen in my life.
And he never drops character.
No.
Ever. He's so good.
Yeah.
And and we don't care.
No.
And it's like you make fun of it. Like, obviously, you make fun of him thinking that he's, because it leans into, obviously, the black audience that would be watching it normally with their jaw dropped.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is how dumb white people are. Like, this is like.
And Al Pacino is just great. I mean, all of it. Like, there's things about the movie that miss for me. There's things that are super, there's a lot about that movie that's really offensive. I mean, the whole Simple Jack bit is pretty offensive. Everything Downey does is pretty offensive. But I don't care. It's kind of really good. Oh, he's amazing. He commits, and like we did an episode at one point on AMA talking about I don't remember the movie now that I go back to. Oh no, it was Collateral.
Yeah, we were talking about going full soloist, right?
And because we had talked about how Jamie Foxx has his big year when he has Ray and Collateral the same year, and wins Best Actor, gets nominated for Best Supporting. And a few years later, he does this Joe Wright movie called The Soloist, where he's like a homeless saxophonist, I think.
And it's him and Downey.
Yeah, it's him and Downey.
Yeah.
And he like went, as they say in this movie, never go full retard. That's the thing they do. But like we were like, we're going to talk about this for an hour. We really want to make sure we don't actually reference.
Maybe trying to become it's not retarded.
So we were like, we're gonna deem when you go for it, but you don't win an Oscar as going full soloist.
Full soloist.
So we've used that term ever since, and the full soloist scene is so good.
It's amazing. Like
fountain and bathtubs, laughing your ass off and shit. Yo, you really went for it. He's so good. Well, yeah, I did go for it.
I did go for it.
Sometimes you lose yourself in a character, and sometimes I would actually think that I was dumb.
I was actually not a smart person.
It's amazing. Like that whole bit. It's just.
And then when he breaks it down about like the actual guys that have won in history and how he's so far from Forrest Gump and from Rain Man is so wonderful. He's a war hero.
Yeah. I mean, all of it. Like the opening sequence in this movie, the big like platoon level war sequence,
Yep.
is so good. It's so funny when he starts crying and his hands are gone. And
like a little stump. Jack Black's hanging in the background.
And and Downey's just crying and he's just snot everywhere. It's so good.
Oh, it hurts. It hurts so much. Yeah, I got to agree. It does. I think the ending falls apart for me the most.
Yeah.
It's so hard to end these movies. It's so hard to end comedies, period. And I think one of the hardest things with action comedies is ending them is because you actually are telling a story that matters.
Yeah.
Like usually in an action movie, you've got to wrap it up. And I think the end of Tropic Thunder falls apart a little bit for me, but yeah, man, it sets the bar and it could never be made now. It was only 10 years ago.
I mean, there's the thing with R-rated comedies that unfortunately, I was just talking about this before we started recording, but like you go back and look at Wedding Crashers, which is like a classic of its time.
Yeah.
And that movie is like so funny. But like I was listening to the Ringer Rewatchables podcast talking about it, and they were like, honestly, if Twitter existed in the way that it does today in 2005, and a movie was advertised about guys that lie about their identities to sleep with single women at weddings,
vulnerable women to sleep with vulnerable women who are intoxicated at weddings.
It would be, there's like no studio would touch that movie with a 10-foot pole. There's no way anybody would make that because it's pretty morally bankrupt. But at the time, for whatever reason, you kind of had this generation of R-rated comedies where there was no accountability for that type of political correctness. And I think this is sort of the cutoff point, 2008, because that's like really when Twitter starts to be a thing. And like, and it's just interesting to look back at these movies that they got made, the way they got made and how they were acceptable at the time.
Yeah, because there's definitely stuff in almost every single one of them that are rough, but I would 100% say Tropic Thunder is the number one, could not be made today, even though it felt like it couldn't be made then. Like even then, I'd heard about Robert Downey doing blackface, and I was like, I must be hearing you wrong, or it must be like a scene.
Even the Simple Jack stuff is like so over the top,
and I like completely had forgotten about that because it's so overshadowed by everything else.
And then, of course, you know, the other thing about this movie that is so legendary is, you know, put yourself back for a second in 2008, and people kind of forget a little bit now because of the success of the last 3 Mission Impossibles.
Oh yeah,
where Cruise actually was.
He wasn't.
Yeah,
you know,
that's exactly right. He had, in 2005, he had gone on this press tour for War of the Worlds, and he had talked really openly about Scientology
and Katie Holmes and the couch jumping and all that.
And Spielberg kind of distanced himself from him, and he's like, I don't want to work with this guy anymore. So the next year, Mission Impossible 3 comes out, it bombs, no one sees it, and Cruise's career takes a break. He doesn't do a movie in 2007, which is the first time he had taken a year off in a while. He hadn't taken a year off for.
And then what does he come back and do? Lions for Lambs?
Yeah, 2008, he does Lions for Lambs. He does Valkyrie that same year in 2008.
Which is a good movie.
Valkyrie's solid, but again,
it's also completely overlooked.
People weren't ready.
Yep.
And this movie, and nobody, it was a surprise cameo. And the story goes that he's good friends with Stiller, and Stiller called him and was like, hey, I want to put you in this movie. I want you to play this agent, Les Grossman. And Cruise's famous line is, okay, I'll do it, but I want fat hands. I don't want to dance. That's what he says to Stiller.
Fat hands. I want to dance.
And he's like, sure, you got it, you know? And that's Cruise's character. He has giant fat hands and he dances. And he's phenomenal as Les Grossman.
Oh, he's excellent.
He's the funniest part of the movie. He steals every scene he's in. His dancing is so good.
I will fuck you. He's so intense. He's horrifying.
Yeah.
But it also, he made fun of himself enough to where us as a society and as an audience were like, maybe Cruise is cooler than we were. Because I was off the Cruise train as well.
He won us back a little bit.
He did.
Not all the way. It took a little while still, but that's the beginning of the rehab. It's like 2011 is the like, you know, Ghost Protocol does well enough that he starts to kind of have a shot again. But like.
And he's back to just being Cruisy Cruise.
Yeah. And I honest to God, remember seeing this movie in theaters and not realizing until after the movie that it was Tom Cruise.
Really?
Yeah. I wasn't as big of a fan then. I think I just was sort of. I wasn't looking for it, so I kind of just missed it.
I remember looking very intently for it because I'd heard Tom Cruise has a crazy cameo, and you're like, okay, Tom Cruise? Really? Like, Cruise is going to do? Okay, all right, sure, Tom Cruise cameo. And then when I finally saw it, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
No way, dude. Like, this is what you're doing? Like, this is amazing. And then, of course, you get, like, McConaughey right before he's about to go on that crazy run with True Detective and Dallas Buyers Club, right?
Yeah.
It's like right after this.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's just a couple years later. He was, at that point that he did this movie, you know, when he's Pecker, Sam Pecker or whatever, he's like.
Tugger Knots.
He's totally a joke. Like, he's still rom-com fool's gold guy.
Yeah.
Sahara guy. He's not like the Lincoln Lawyer guy. He's not Mud. He's not any of that just other shit. So I think this movie succeeds on so many levels because it's so over the top. It's so funny. It's such a smart reference to the war genre.
Do you think that it's the most important one on the list because of like what it did when it came out and the boundaries it broke?
I mean, of the ones that we're talking about as the essential movies, yes.
Yeah.
If we're talking about including all the honorable mentions and we're sort of talking about the importance of these movies, there's an argument to be made that Guardians is the most important movie of all because it's the biggest risk with the biggest, most money behind it that has like really become an institution, that franchise now. And it was such a weird swing to for it to become like $1 billion movie. Like none of these movies, one of these movies made $200 million. Guardians made $1 billion.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and we were trying to kind of keep this list within the last 10 years because it'd be too hard to talk about the action comedies for the last 50 years. And also these are the most relevant movies out now. So that's our 5. Those are the 5 movies the 5 action comedies you must see before you die, no matter how terrible it might be.
Yeah, to reiterate one more time, guys, you got Tropic Thunder, MacGruber, The Other Guys, Spy, and The Nice Guys. 3 of these films, Tropic Thunder, The Other Guys, and The Nice Guys, all have full action movie anatomy, hour-long episodes talking about every act of the careers, thesis statements. I mean, you can go get a whole breakdown if you want to really have a moment. And I do believe Spy and MacGruber will both make our show at some point.
Yeah, they 100% will. And I'm sure you guys have a ton of movies that you like that we left off the list. This is our collective 5 that we feel are the most important for you guys to see. So please let us know what movies we missed, how you guys feel about our list. You can even rank them down below in the comments. We will definitely be communicating with you. I'm so glad we did this.
Yeah, this is great.
It was the best thing that came out of Mortal Engines.
Yeah. Far and away, guys. If you want to follow along with what we're saying, what we're doing, follow at Team Action Show. Be sure to check out patreon.com/Team Action. We've got additional content coming out every single week on there. Drew and I do movie breakdowns. We do Schmodown, behind the scenes reactions, all kinds of cool shit.
Yeah,
So,
we recently did a mini AMA on the Social Network that came up. It was, I mean, we love that movie.
Yep. Yeah, it's a great one. So check that out and, follow along on Twitter at Ben Bateman Media, Instagram, Ben Bateman Media.
Yeah, you guys can find me at Andrew Ghai. Remember to click that subscribe button, all the things that you need to do to stay with us every single time an episode comes out.
Yeah, leave your thoughts below. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll be back next time. Bye.